The sky over Washington, D.C. turned strange just after noon. It wasn't stormy or dark, but the light bent in odd ways like heat shimmering off desert sand. People stopped walking. Cars slowed. Phones buzzed with emergency alerts that said nothing but stand by. Then, without sound or flash, a figure appeared in the air above the National Mall. It wasn't a person. It was tall, smooth, and made of shifting silver light. Its voice came not through speakers or air, but directly into every mind on Earth at once. "You have been watched," it said. "For centuries you have burned your world, fought your kin, and reached for the stars with hands stained in blood. Now you build ships that pierce the void. You split atoms and twist gravity. You dare to dream of empire among the stars." The figure paused. Though time didn't seem to pass, millions held their breath. "This ends now." The voice grew colder, sharper. "The Galactic Council, representing 37 spacefaring civilizations, has judged your species a threat to cosmic order. You will disarm all interstellar weapons. You will cease all colonization beyond your solar system. You will submit to Council oversight within 30 standard cycles, 30 of your days. Refuse and we will act. Not with cruelty, but with finality. Your world will be rendered inert. Your fire will be extinguished. This is not a negotiation. This is your final warning." Then the figure vanished. The sky returned to normal. Birds resumed their songs, but nothing was the same. In the White House Situation Room, President Carl Dawson sat very still. His hands rested on the table, fingers laced tight. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the room's cool air. Around him, generals, scientists, and diplomats stared at blank screens, faces pale. No one spoke for a full minute. Then the room erupted. "We can't comply," said Defense Secretary Owen Briggs, his voice rough. "They're asking us to kneel. To give up everything we've built in space, Mars bases, lunar labs, the Jupiter outposts, all of it. And if we say no?" asked Secretary of State Miriam Cole, her voice trembling. "They'll wipe us out." They said inert. That means dead, frozen, gone. Carl Dawson finally moved. He stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the city below. People were gathering in the streets now, confused, scared, angry. He thought of his daughter in Chicago, his brother in Oregon, the farmers in Iowa who'd never seen an alien but would pay the price all the same. "They think we're just another species," he said quietly. "Another civilization that bows when a bigger one shows up. But they don't know us." He turned back to the room. "Get me Lena Ruiz and pull every deep space asset report we have. I want to know exactly what we've got out there and what we can hide." Lena Ruiz arrived 2 hours later. She wasn't a soldier or a politician. She was an astrophysicist from the University of Colorado, known for her work on cryogenic field theory, how extreme cold could warp space and energy. She wore a simple blue jacket and carried a worn laptop. Her dark hair was tied back and her eyes were sharp, already calculating. "They gave us an ultimatum," Carl said, skipping greetings. "What can we do?" Lena didn't flinch. "They assume we'll either surrender or fight with lasers and missiles. But cold. Cold is something they might not expect. In deep space near absolute zero, physics behaves strangely. Time slows. Energy dissipates. Matter becomes brittle. If we can control that, we don't have time to build new weapons," Owen cut in. "We don't need to," Lena replied. "We already have the tools. The Europa ice mines, the cryo-storage units on the Mars freighters, the orbital coolers around Saturn. They're not weapons now, but they could be. With the right programming, the right triggers, we could turn entire regions of space into traps." Carl leaned forward. "How long? 30 days? Lena shook her head. "Not enough to build an army, but enough to prepare a response. Not a war. A statement," Owen frowned. "A statement won't stop an armada." "No," Lena said. "But silence might, and ice, and the kind of patience they've never seen." Across the planet, similar conversations were happening in hushed tones. In Moscow, Beijing, Nairobi, Buenos Aires, leaders faced the same choice. Some called for immediate surrender. Others whispered of resistance. But something unexpected happened. For the first time in decades, Earth's nations began sharing data, resources, and plans, not out of trust but out of shared survival. The Chinese offered their lunar radar arrays. The Brazilians opened their deep space comms network. The Europeans sent engineers to help retrofit old cargo ships. No one announced it. No grand alliance was declared. But quietly, humanity began to move as one. On Mars, Nora Finch stood in the red dust outside Habitat Gamma. She was the colony's lead administrator, tough and practical. Her team had spent years building greenhouses, water recyclers, and oxygen farms. Now they were tearing them apart. "Why are we doing this?" asked a young technician holding a dismantled air filter. "Because they think we're weak," Nora said, wiping dust from her goggles. "They think we'll beg. But Martians don't beg. We adapt." She pointed to the horizon where the sun hung small and cold. "We're going to make the void even colder." Back on Earth, Carl Dawson addressed the United Nations via secure link. He didn't speak of war or defiance. He spoke of dignity. "We do not seek conflict," he said, "but we will not be erased without a voice. Let them come. Let them see what humanity chooses when cornered." The message was broadcast worldwide. It wasn't fiery or dramatic. It was calm, resolute, and it spread faster than fear ever could. In the days that followed, Earth grew quieter. Military drills stopped. News channels ran fewer panic segments. People planted gardens, checked on neighbors, and taught their kids old songs. It wasn't resignation, it was preparation of a different kind. The kind that comes when you know you might not have long, so you make every moment count. Meanwhile, in hidden labs and orbital docks, work continued. Engineers welded cryocoils onto freighter hulls. Programmers wrote code that turned ice into sensors. Scientists tested how fast a wave of absolute zero could spread through vacuum. No one called it a weapon. They called it the frost line. 28 days remained. The Galactic Council received Earth's first official reply on day 3. It was a single sentence transmitted on every frequency they monitored. "We hear you, no plea." No threat, just acknowledgement. The Council debated. Some members argued humanity was stalling. Others warned that silence could mean danger. But most believed the outcome was certain. After all, what could a young, fractured species do against the combined might of 37 advanced civilizations? They did not know that humanity's greatest strength was not in its weapons, but in its refusal to be predictable. They did not know that when pushed to the edge, humans did not break, they froze. And in that stillness, they became something new. Carl Dawson stood again at the White House window on the 5th night. Snow had begun to fall, soft and steady. He thought of the stars above and the cold waiting between them. He thought of Lena's quiet confidence, Owen's grim focus, Nora's stubborn hope on Mars. He smiled faintly. "Let them come," he thought. "Let them see what ice can do." While the world watched the skies and waited, humanity moved in silence. No grand speeches were made. No fleets were paraded. Instead, work began in the cold dark beyond Earth, where eyes could not easily see and signals faded into static. The Galactic Council expected panic or pleas. They did not expect quiet hands and colder minds. Deep beneath the icy crust of Europa, in tunnels carved by robotic drills decades ago, engineers rewired old mining rigs. These machines once pulled water ice for fuel and oxygen. Now, under the watchful eye of a quiet engineer named Eli Vance, they were being turned into something else. Eli had spent his life studying how matter behaved near absolute zero. He didn't speak much, but his hands moved fast, connecting cryopumps to quantum stabilizers, linking dormant reactors to new control nodes. His team worked in shifts, sleeping in narrow bunks, eating nutrient paste, never seeing sunlight. They didn't need it. Their sun was the cold itself. On Mars, Nora Finch stood inside a repurposed greenhouse. The tomato vines were gone. In their place stood rows of signal jammers built from terraforming emitters. Each unit hummed softly, powered by solar cells still feeding off the weak Martian sun. Her team had stripped every non-essential system from the colony, life support backups and spare rovers, even the entertainment servers, to feed this new purpose. "We're not hiding," she told a young technician who looked nervous. "We're waiting, and when they come, they won't hear us coming." In orbit around Saturn, hidden within the swirling ice of its rings, a fleet of civilian freighters drifted. These ships once carried helium-3 and rare metals. Now, their cargo holds were filled with gravitic shielding coils designed by Eli's notes and tested in secret labs on the moon. Owen Briggs coordinated the effort from a command pod bolted to the side of the largest ship, the Pioneer Dawn. He didn't wear a uniform, just a gray jacket and a headset that crackled with updates from Earth, Mars, and the outer stations. "No flashy engines," he told the pilots. "No energy spikes. We glide, we drift, we become part of the dark." Back on Earth, President Carl Dawson met with Lena Ruiz every evening. They didn't meet in the Situation Room anymore. Too many ears. Instead, they walked through Rock Creek Park, coats pulled tight against the autumn chill. No guards followed. No recorders ran. Just two people talking under bare trees. Project Frostline is ready for Phase 2, Lena said one night, her breath fogging in the air. The cryomines are armed. They won't explode. They'll freeze. Anything that passes within 5 kilometers will slow down. Time, energy, even thought. It's not destruction. It's pause, Carl nodded. Will it work on their ships? We don't know their tech, Lena admitted. But physics is physics. Cole doesn't care who you are. They walked a little farther. A squirrel darted across the path. Somewhere a dog barked. Normal sounds. Human sounds. Carl wondered if they'd still hear them in 20 days. Meanwhile, across the planet, ordinary people did ordinary things, but with a new weight. Farmers checked their fields not just for crops, but for hidden antenna arrays disguised as irrigation poles. Fishermen in Alaska reported strange sonar echoes, not from whales, but from underwater comms relays being tested in the Bering Sea. School children in Nairobi learned new math, not for tests, but to help calculate signal delays for deep space jamming nets. No one was told the full plan, not even most soldiers, but everyone sensed something was happening. A quiet shift. A shared understanding. You didn't need orders to know your home was worth defending. In Geneva, diplomats from 50 nations met in a windowless room beneath the old UN building. They didn't argue over borders or trade. They shared data, real data. China handed over schematics for their lunar radar. India sent encryption keys for their satellite network. Brazil opened access to their Amazon-based deep space listening posts. It wasn't trust. It was necessity. And necessity for once made allies of rivals. On the moon, inside a crater near the South Pole, a team led by a soft-spoken engineer named Ray Patel finished installing the last cryobeacon. It looked like a simple metal rod no bigger than a broomstick, but inside it held a core cooled to near 0 Kelvin. When triggered, it would emit a pulse that bent local spacetime into a frozen lattice. It's not a bomb, Ray explained to his crew. It's a door, and we're locking it from the inside. Back on Earth, Carl approved the final step. No broadcast. No warning. Just a single encrypted order sent to every hidden station, ship, and lab. Begin silent activation. That night the stars seemed brighter. Not because the sky was clearer, but because Earth's own lights dimmed. Cities reduced power. Satellites went dark. Radio chatter dropped to near silence. To an outside observer, humanity was folding in on itself, retreating into shadow. The Council's long-range scouts noted the change. They reported it as signs of compliance. They were wrong. What they saw as surrender was preparation. In the Jovian system, Europa's surface remained still. But beneath the ice, thousands of cryomines powered up, their cores glowing faint blue in the dark water. Around Saturn, freighters powered down their main engines and let the ring's gravity carry them like leaves on a frozen river. On Mars, the jammers began emitting low-frequency pulses, so weak they mimicked natural dust storms. And on Earth, children went to bed early. Parents held them a little longer. Teachers taught lessons about stars, not war. Because if this failed, those stars would be all that remained. Lena stood alone on a hill outside Boulder, watching the night sky. She thought of her parents, long gone, who had taught her to look up and wonder. Now she was helping turn that wonder into a shield. She didn't feel proud. She felt tired, but also clear. Like ice, 20 days remained. The Council sent another message. Short, cold. Your silence is noted. Compliance is expected. Earth sent back nothing. Not a word. Not a signal. Not even static. Just silence. And in that silence, the frost spread. The 29th day arrived with a stillness that felt heavier than silence. Earth's cities were dim, its skies empty of aircraft, its oceans calm. From orbit, the planet looked asleep or dead. The Galactic Council took it as a sign of submission. They were wrong. Beyond Pluto, space tore open, not with fire or thunder, but with a ripple, like a stone dropped into dark water. Then they came. Hundreds of ships, sleek and silver, gliding in perfect formation. Their hulls shimmered with energy fields that bent light and repelled cosmic rays. At their center floated the Harmonious Edict, the Council's flagship, a vessel so vast it cast a shadow across dwarf planets. It carried no weapons visible to human eyes, only the promise of order. Enforced by technologies older than human civilization, a voice echoed across every frequency Earth still monitored. Calm, certain, final. Your time has ended. Surrender now, and your species may yet serve the greater harmony. No reply came. Not from Washington, not from Geneva, not from Mars or the Moon, only static. The council hesitated. They had expected fear, begging, last-minute pleas. Instead, they found nothing. Not even a distress beacon. It unnerved them more than resistance would have. Send the scouts, ordered High Arbiter Vex aboard the Harmonious Edict. Scan the inner system. Confirm compliance. Dozens of small dart-like drones peeled away from the fleet. They moved fast. Faster than any human ship could follow, streaking toward Jupiter like silver needles. Their sensors probed for energy signatures, life signs, hidden bases. They found nothing unusual. Just the cold gas giant, its swirling storms, its icy moons. Then, as the lead drone crossed Europa's orbit, it vanished, not exploded. Not jammed. Simply gone. One moment it was transmitting data. The next, its signal flatlined. The drone behind it slowed, scanning for debris. It found none. Only a patch of space colder than it should be. So cold that even photons seemed to crawl. Before the council could react, the second drone froze. Its outer shell crystallized in an instant, then shattered into glittering dust. The third tried to retreat, but its engines sputtered and died as if time itself had thickened around it. One by one, the scouts fell silent, swallowed by a cold that did not burn but preserved, like a tomb made of frost. On the Harmonious Edict, alarms blared. Unknown phenomenon, a technician reported, voice tight. Localized space-time distortion. Temperature near absolute zero. High Arbiter Vex frowned. Impossible. Natural cold cannot act with such precision, but this was not natural. From hidden crevices in Europa's ice, cryomines activated. They did not fire missiles. They released waves of engineered cold, fields where molecular motion nearly stopped. Space itself became sluggish. Energy beams fired in testing sputtered out before they traveled a kilometer. Sensors fogged. Communications stuttered. The council fleet slowed, confused. Their advanced tech relied on smooth, predictable physics. Here, physics had teeth. Then Saturn's rings lit up, not with light but with silence. Gravitic pulses tuned to human-made frequencies rippled through the ice particles. The pulses didn't attack. They masked. Suddenly, the council's long-range scanners saw only noise. Ships that had been drifting in the rings, old freighters like the Pioneer Dawn, now vanished from detection, cloaked not by stealth tech but by the chaos of warped gravity and frozen dust. Owen Briggs sat in his command pod, hands steady on the controls. Now, he said. Across the outer system, human vessels powered up, not their engines but their cryo-emitters. Cold bloomed in the void like invisible flowers. A council cruiser that strayed too close to a drifting ice chunk found its hull frosting over in seconds. Internal alarms screamed as life support systems seized. The ship listed dead in space, a glittering monument to human patience. Back on Earth, Carl Dawson watched from the White House bunker. Screens showed the battle not as explosions but as fading signals and dropping temperatures. They don't understand, he murmured. No, Lena Ruiz replied, standing beside him. They think war is fire. We showed them ice. On Mars, Nora Finch activated the final jammer array. A low hum filled the red plains, then spread into space. The council's comms with their forward units crackled, then died. They were blind, cold, and alone in a system that had turned against them. The Harmonious Edict tried to retreat. But as it turned, a single human ship emerged from the shadow of Ganymede. Small, unarmed. Just a modified science probe with a message pod. It broadcast on all channels, clear and calm. You should have studied us better. Then it self-destructed, not with fire, but by releasing its entire coolant reserve into space. A cloud of supercooled gas expanded, wrapping around the Edict's bow like a shroud. Ice spread across its hull. Internal systems faltered. Lights dimmed. High Arbiter Vex stared at the view screen, disbelief hardening into dread. This was not the chaotic violence they expected from humans. This was precision. Strategy. A trap built not of metal but of cold silence and time. Fall back, he ordered, voice tight. All ships retreat to safe distance, but retreat was not easy. The void itself resisted. Every turn, every burst of speed met with pockets of frozen space that clung like tar. Ships that fired weapons found their energy beams diffused, absorbed by the chill. Drones sent ahead froze before they traveled 1,000 kilometers. From Earth, no taunts came. No victory cries, only quiet observation. In lunar orbit, Ray Patel watched the Council fleet stumble. He keyed a final command into his console. Deep inside the moon's South Pole crater, the cryobeacon hummed to life. It did not target the fleet. It targeted the space around them. A sphere of slowed time began to expand, gentle as breath but unstoppable. The Council ships did not explode. They simply stopped moving. Not broken, not destroyed, preserved like insects in amber, floating in a sea of ice-cold stillness. Carl Dawson exhaled. "We didn't win a war," he said. "We changed the rules," Lena nodded. "They came to erase us. Instead, they learned what happens when you corner a species that knows how to wait." Above, the stars burned cold and clear, and for the first time in 30 days, Earth's lights began to return. The Council fleet hung in space like statues carved from frost. Their silver hulls glittered under distant starlight, coated in layers of ice that should not exist in vacuum. Inside, crews moved slowly, as if wading through thick water. Time itself had thickened around them, warped by the cryofields humanity had seeded across the outer system. Alarms blinked weakly. Systems rebooted and failed again. No explosions had torn their ships apart. No lasers had pierced their shields. They had simply been wrapped in silence and cold, and now they could not move. Aboard the Harmonious Edict, High Arbiter Vex stared at the frozen view screen. His long fingers tapped a rhythm only he understood. Around him, his advisors argued in hushed tones. Some demanded total annihilation, activate the planet cracker arrays, burn Earth to glass, end this insult forever. Others whispered that such an act would violate the Council's oldest laws. But a third group, small but growing, said nothing. They watched the data streams and felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. "How?" one young analyst finally asked. "Their technology is primitive, their history is war. Yet they did not fight. They waited, and they used the void itself as a weapon." Vex did not answer. He replayed the last transmission from the human probe. "You should have studied us better." The words echoed in his mind. Not a boast. A lesson. On Earth, people did not celebrate. They gathered in parks, on rooftops, in quiet homes, and simply looked up. They knew the danger was not over. The Council still had ships beyond the frost line. They still had power. But for now, they were stuck. And that gave humanity time. In the White House bunker, Carl Dawson met with Lena Ruiz and Owen Briggs. No cheers, no handshakes. Just tired eyes and steady voices. "They're not dead," Owen said, pointing to a screen showing the immobilized fleet. "Just slowed. Given enough time, they'll break free." "But not today," Lena replied, "and not before we make our next move." Carl nodded. "We don't want to destroy them. We want them to understand." He turned to a secure channel. "Get me Nora on Mars, and Ray on the moon." Minutes. Later, faces appeared on screen. Nora Finch, her red dust-streaked face calm, and Ray Patel blinking behind thick glasses in his lunar crater lab. "We're ready," Carl said. "Initiate the beacon pulse." Ray typed a final command. Deep inside the moon, the cryo-beacon shifted frequency. Instead of freezing, it began to hum, a low, resonant tone that traveled through space-time like a heartbeat. The ice on the Council ships did not melt. It vibrated, gently, steadily, like a lullaby. On the Harmonious Edict, Vex felt it in his bones. A rhythm, human, patient, not threatening. Just present. "What is that?" he asked. "It's a signal," the analyst said, eyes wide. "Not a weapon. A message, encoded in quantum frost patterns." They decoded it slowly. It contained no demands, no threats, just data, blueprints, schematics of the cryofield generators, explanations of how cold could bend time, and at the end, a single line. "This is not how we fight. This is how we survive." Vex sat back. For the first time, he saw humanity not as a threat, but as something else entirely. A species that turned defense into art, that used stillness as strength, that chose preservation over destruction. Meanwhile, Owen Briggs guided the Pioneer Dawn through the frozen debris near Saturn. His crew moved quietly, attaching small devices to disabled Council scout drones. Not bombs, translators. Each one carried a simple audio file, recordings of Earth. Children laughing, rain falling, wind through trees, a violin playing in Prague. Sounds of a world that refused to be silent. Back on Mars, Nora Finch powered down the jammers. The red planet fell quiet again, but before she did, she sent one final burst, not to jam, but to invite. A clear channel, open and unencrypted, pointed toward the trapped fleet. "If you wish to speak," it said, "we are listening." The Council debated for hours. Some called it a trick. Others saw it as weakness. But Vex made the decision. He ordered a single reply, sent not through weapons channels, but through the same open frequency. "We hear you." 2 words, but they changed everything. On Earth, Carl allowed himself a small breath. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a start. In hidden labs and orbital docks, work shifted. Engineers stopped building traps and began building bridges. Eli Vance on Europa rewired a cryomine into a sample container, filled not with weapons but with pure water ice from Jupiter's moon, offered as a gift. Ray Patel on the moon prepared a data crystal containing centuries of human music, math, and stories. Nora Finch packed soil from Mars, red, dry, and full of hope. They were not preparing for war anymore. They were preparing for conversation. The frost around the Council ships began to thin, not because it melted, but because humanity eased the field. They gave the fleet room to breathe, but not to flee. A balance. A test. Vex watched his ship's systems slowly return to normal. He could order an attack. He could call for reinforcements. But something held him back. He thought of the violin music, the sound of rain, the quiet courage in that simple message. "You should have studied us better." Perhaps it was time to study them now. He gave a new order. "Prepare a small envoy vessel, unarmed, send it toward Earth's moon, and open all communication channels." As the tiny ship detached from the edict, Owen Briggs guided the Pioneer Dawn to meet it halfway. No weapons charged, no shields raised, just 2 vessels, one silver, one patched and worn, floating in the cold. Inside, humans and aliens looked at each other through viewports. No words yet, just eyes. Curious, cautious, alive. Back on Earth, a child in Nairobi pointed to the sky. "Is it over?" she asked her mother. Her mother held her close. "No," she said softly. "But maybe it's beginning." And high above, in the silent dark, 2 species reached not for weapons but for understanding, wrapped in the same cold that had once been their battlefield. The envoy ship from the Harmonious Edict was small and smooth, shaped like a teardrop of polished silver. It carried no weapons, no armor, only 3 alien delegates and a single translator drone. It drifted slowly toward the moon, guided by gentle thrusters and the quiet hand of human navigation from the Pioneer Dawn. Owen Briggs watched from his cockpit, his breath steady, his hands resting lightly on the controls. He did not speak. He did not need to. The silence between the 2 ships was already a language. On the lunar surface inside a newly built dome near the South Pole, Carl Dawson, Lena Ruiz, and Ray Patel waited. They wore simple clothes, dark jackets, sturdy boots, no uniforms. They wanted to be seen not as soldiers or rulers, but as people. Nora Finch joined them through a live feed from Mars, her face clear on a screen, red dust faint on her collar. They had rehearsed nothing. There would be no scripts, no grand speeches, only truth. The alien delegates stepped onto the moon's surface. Their suits shimmered, adjusting to the low gravity and thin atmosphere inside the dome. They were tall, with smooth gray skin and large dark eyes that reflected the Earth hanging in the black sky above. They moved carefully, as if afraid to disturb the dust beneath their feet. High Arbiter Vex was not among them. He remained aboard the Edict watching, But his voice came through the translator drone, calm and measured. "You did not destroy us," the drone said, its tone almost human. "You could have. Your cold fields could have held us until our ships failed. Yet you eased them. Why?" Carl Dawson stepped forward. "Because we did not want slaves. And we did not want graves. We wanted respect," Lena added. "You came to judge us. But you did not know us. You saw our wars, our fires, our noise. You did not see our quiet, our patience, our ice." The lead delegate tilted its head. "Ice is death in our understanding. Cold ends life." "Not for us," Ray said softly. "For us, ice preserves. It protects. It gives time to think, to heal, to wait for the right moment." The aliens were silent for a long time. Then the drone spoke again. "We have watched younger species before. Many begged. Some fought with rage. None used stillness as a shield. None turned the void into a teacher." Nora's voice came through the speaker, clear and strong. "We are not like others. We burn, yes, but we also freeze. We break, yes, but we also rebuild. You gave us a warning. We gave you an answer. Not with fire. With frost." The lead delegate stepped closer. "What do you ask of us now?" Carl looked at the earth, blue and white in the sky. "A seat at your table. Not as subjects, not as threats, as equals. We offer knowledge, our science, our art, our mistakes. We ask for the same, and we ask that you never again speak to us as if we are less." The aliens exchanged glances. Their language was silent, made of gestures and shifts in skin tone. Then the drone spoke. "The council is divided. Some still fear you, but many now see what we saw in the cold, a species that does not waste power, that chooses control over chaos, that defends without destroying." It paused. "We accept your terms." No cheers rose on the moon, no music played. But something deeper passed between them, a shift in the air like the first thaw after a long winter. In the days that followed, the frozen council ships were released fully. Their crews, shaken but alive, began repairs. Human engineers offered help, not out of pity but partnership. Eli Vance sent schematics for better cryo-shielding. Nora shared data on Martian soil that could feed alien crops. Ray and alien scientists compared notes on space-time physics, finding common ground in equations written in different symbols but the same truths. On Earth, life returned to normal, but not the old normal. People walked with their heads a little higher. Children drew pictures of silver ships and icy moons. Farmers planted seeds in fields that had once hidden antennas. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet pride. The Galactic Council did not vanish. They stayed, not as overlords, but as guests. A small station was built in lunar orbit, a place for meetings, for trade, for learning. Humans brought coffee, music, and stories of survival. Aliens brought star maps, medical tech, and tales of civilizations that had risen and fallen across the galaxy. Carl Dawson visited the station once, just to see. He stood by a viewport watching a human cargo hauler dock beside a council vessel. No weapons, no tension. Just two ships sharing the same sky. Lena joined him. "They thought we were loud," she said. "But our strength was in the quiet." He nodded. "And they'll never forget it." Back on Mars, Nora Finch stood outside Habitat Gamma again. The sun was setting, painting the dust in shades of orange and purple. A small alien bot rolled beside her, taking soil samples. It beeped softly. "They're learning," she said to no one in particular, and they were. Across the solar system, humanity did not change. They did not become perfect. They still argued, still made mistakes, still reached for the stars with messy human hands. But now when they looked up, they knew they were not alone and they were not lesser. The Council's final warning had been met not with surrender, not with fury, but with ice. And in that cold, clear response, humanity had not just survived. They had earned a place among the stars, not by burning brighter than others, but by knowing when to be still. And so, under the same sky that had once held a threat, humans and aliens began to build something new, not an empire, not a treaty, but a promise that even in the coldest dark, understanding could grow.